Well, I think what you talked about in terms of like, okay, like the actual sets we better and like the focus on them is interesting because at the end of the day, like a lot of times, I've said this years back, and a lot of people will say, okay, well, like who cares about, let's say, pump or how this feels? If you take somebody whose bench press goes from 225 for 10 to 315 for 10, that's going to be a much bigger person. And I agree with that. I mean, in almost all cases. But what I would say is like, well, how do you get there? Right. Because it's one thing to just say that, but that doesn't mean you just go in, you just bench 225 for 10, and then the next week you do 230 for 10, et cetera. So to all of like your points there, it's like, well, these methods in theory will get you the growth, or maybe like to your point, if you feel nothing in that muscle growth or in that muscle group, there won't be the growth to then lead to the strength to then eventually over, however many years get you to that higher bench press. Because I've
Yes.
seen you say many times over and over, of course, you do want to get stronger over time, but it's like, I think the biggest debate between these different camps is like, how are you getting there? And to your point, if you're not even feeling it, it's probably not doing a ton.
A bunch of classic examples. So let's say that you happen to be a person who's working on getting bigger legs. And for you, the squat exercise is something that when you normally do it in such a way as to lift the most weight, you use a lot of glutes and a lot of your back, which is totally fine in powerlifting, totally fine way to squat, and it's great hypertrophy for your glutes and back. So you don't really feel your quads a ton. You never really did. And someone tells you, look, you're like, oh, I'm not feeling it in my quads. Like, I'm not getting like a quad pump from squatting. Is that a problem? This caricature of an individual replies back to you like, dude, it doesn't matter. Just get stronger and your muscles will grow. Right on. So I do the squat for months and months and months. And because the weights are going up and because I'm really feeding to my strengths, which is an important point, what are my strengths? Well, super strong back, super strong glutes that always try to engage. My technique even changes slightly over the course of these few months to result in more glute and lower back engagement and less quad engagement fractionally, because that would be playing to my weaknesses. Why would I do that? So after 6 months, your squat has gone up substantially, and you come back to the gym, or you're in the gym again, and that guy is there, and he's like, "Hey, you're squatting a lot more, buddy. How are you doing quads?" And you could honestly be like, "I don't think my quads have gotten any bigger. My back's doing cool shit, so my glutes." So it's one of those like, oh, that's a problem, and it even applies to isolation exercises. A lot of the strength you gain is neural. It's technical. It's architectural. So you could say, okay, my ability to do bicep curls with a cable or tricep extensions or something has over the past several months substantially improved. Then I really feel like I'm trying hard on the exercise and I'm getting these little PRs, but at the same time, like I don't really get big pumps, big soreness. My muscle doesn't feel tired, and it just my elbows hurt, my shoulders start hurting a little bit towards the end of the sets. I'm getting stronger, but my joints are starting to hurt. And then you look at it honestly, you go, man, like my triceps don't really look that much bigger. I'm just using the same triceps that I had to get them stronger, and I haven't optimized for size. And one way in which that reflects itself with the stimulus to fatigue ratio is maybe your rep range is wrong. And there's countless times when people have done a certain exercise they think is not a good exercise because they did it in a rep range in which it's not optimized. People do tricep extensions with sets of 5 to 10. They get no pump, nothing. You get some tension, but it just ends up hurting their joints. Like, I'm getting stronger, but I don't know if this is like making me as jacked as possible. And then at the other end, they try sets of 20 to 25 at some point because they're tired of their elbows hurting. And after 3 sets, they're blown up like crazy. You can barely move the triceps. Triceps are so tired they can barely contract. Then 3 days after, they're sore. And then they keep repeating that because they're like, well, I feel like it's doing something. I'm just not going to discount this. And then they have bigger triceps weeks and months later. So the idea that you just have to chase strength PRs is true as far as it goes. It helps to train for strength, or it helps to notice your strength and where it's going. But it doesn't mean you issue every single other factor completely out of the equation. It's like if you're, taking a road trip to another city that's 4 hours away, the only thing you actually need is an engine with some kind of control mechanism on it. Like you can sit on an engine with wheels and a fucking steering wheel and technically get to, New York City from Philadelphia. You can do it. So if someone's like, like, hey, what kind of car should I rent to go to New York or to go to Philly? Someone's like, it doesn't matter. Just make sure it has a fucking steering column, wheels, and an engine. And you're just like, oh, you're right on, man. Yeah, I know how transportation works. Thanks so much. But maybe I'd like to be a modicum of comfort, maybe something I'm interested in, or the weather not getting in my face, and 50 other things that optimize the process to get what we really want, which is a pleasant road trip. So another thing, if people go too far with the strength stuff, is there's a conundrum that ends up occurring where they're like, you can ask them to say, strength on the compound movements is really all we're interested in, mind muscle connection, all that stuff doesn't matter, pump doesn't matter. Should we expect that if we trained exactly like powerlifters, we would get the maximum hypertrophy results? And they would say yes. And they often say yes, even on podcasts, these folks. And it's just wrong because powerlifters aren't as jacked as bodybuilders. And there's another line of evidence there where when powerlifters switch to bodybuilding, they start training for more mind muscle connection. They start to try to value pumps a little bit more and soreness and really eking out, all the energy from the muscle they're targeting and really being concerned about, is this exercise targeting my quads? A lot of powerlifters, when they switch to bodybuilding, will not just squat anymore for their quads. They'll start doing leg extensions and hack squats and leg press. Do you think why? Like, why don't they just get stronger at the squat? Well, they're really strong at the squat and the quads aren't that big. They could be bigger. Mm-hmm. And if we got them bigger, they wouldn't be very functional because they're optimized for size from hack squats and leg presses, and they would carry over to the powerlifting movements. But then, your weight class isn't the right one anymore because you're super jacked. Like I've actually seen a couple of very high level bodybuilders compete with powerlifters in powerlifting. And you're like, man, that guy looks amazing and he looks so strong. But honestly, he's losing to guys or tying guys that look 20 pounds less muscular than him. They really weigh in 20 pounds lighter. So he's in a weight class way too high. He's got all these billowy, poofy muscles. But if that's what we want, we should probably train like that. And it's a very odd curiosity when you have specifically intermediate or beginner natural bodybuilders, the people that love to say this kind of stuff. And I can get into why they say it, my suspicion. They say, you just got to train like a powerlifter to get huge, except all the biggest powerlifters, when they try to get huge, they train like bodybuilders. Like they literally switch their training to train like body. That's a curiosity we have to address. Are they really just those powerlifters, that dumb? They're abandoning on what got them huge, and they really should be making no change whatsoever. It strains the imagination to think.